Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is a traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples.
This is also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other Native nations.
We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it.
As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the highest nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed.
CSU is a land-grant institution, and we accept that our mission must encompass access to education and inclusion.
And significantly, that our founding came at a dire cost to Native nations and peoples whose land this university was built upon.
This acknowledgement is the education and inclusion we must practice in recognizing our institutional history, responsibility, and commitment.
Okay, let me try this mic again. I can't reach the microphone back here. Can folks hear me okay? Okay. A couple of things that we want folks to know about our conference today. So typically the Graduate School Conference has been housed at the Academic Advancement Center for the last couple of years. Something that we are shifting that we wanted to really talk about today also was the collaboration that's been growing with our conference. Our numbers have been growing over the years. And this year we've had the opportunity to collaborate with the Community for Excellence on campus and also the Student Diversity Programs and Services offices on campus, which include the following here. I know we have campus visitors, which is awesome. So we also typically invite other TRIO programs across the state and just like the region. So we've had Wyoming come before, Montana attend virtually, which is great. Is anyone connected to a specific program on campus that's listed on here or from a different institution? What do we have in the house? We're from UNC. UNC, thanks for coming. I know UNC has been an awesome program that's been coming. Are you all from the CHE program? Yeah. Yay. And what's CHE? Center for Human Enrichment. Yeah, Center for Human Enrichment. Welcome. Is anybody connected to any of these other programs? CSU students? Shout them out. C4E, so the Community for Excellence. Anybody virtually?
Yeah, we have, CU Denver McNair.
CU. Nice.
UNC CHE, C4E, Pride, WGAC.
Yeah, the Women and Gender Advocacy Center, Pride Resource Center. Awesome. And of course, AEC students. And so there's usually a lot of overlap, but this is a big collaboration that we're hoping to continue throughout, moving forward, really. So just really wanted to name that as a big part of our conference this year. So let's go ahead and keep checking in. So if you haven't checked in yet, we are doing a virtual check-in. So there are QR codes on the tables. You only have to do this once throughout the day. You don't have to do it for each session, but we just want to make sure we check like who actually came. So make sure to do that. Stephanie will be sharing that QR code with our folks who are tuning in via Zoom. Also, just want to remind folks that in your folders, there's an agenda. We have a STEM track and a general track. You don't have to stick with one or the other based on like what you think you need to stick to. You are more than welcome to like bounce around. The main breakouts that are happening between those two tracks are at 11 a.m. and at 2 p.m. The rest of the sessions are open for everybody, which will be in this room. So this room will be one of the breakout rooms, and we will also have the LSC 300 room, which is going to be when you walk out by the registration table, it'll be on your left down a small hall, just keep going left. So make sure that you're going to a breakout room there, that it'll be on the left. Lunch is provided later today. We will be having spoons. And as folks are heading out for the day, make sure to also fill out an evaluation. That'll give us great feedback for us to take a look at what we need to improve for next year. For our folks who are tuning in virtually, we would love for you to do that as well when you're heading out for the day. Bathrooms are down the hall to the right. All-inclusive restrooms are on the left side for folks as well. Any questions about just like the general format of today? Okay. So again, this is really tiny, so I'm really sorry, but again, those breakout sessions are happening at 11 and at 2. For our folks who are tuning in via Zoom, please look at that program. All the Zoom links are on there. We will have some folks visiting during the lunch hour in the room 300 for folks who want to learn about some graduate programs at CSU. And that's all I have. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to our keynote for the day. And we'll be in here until 11 before the first breakout session. But just want to introduce Dr. Colleen Webb. I'm going to read their bio and then they can go ahead and come on up. So Dr. Colleen Webb is the Associate Dean of the Graduate School at Colorado State University. She is also a full professor with the Joint Appointment in the Department of Biology and Mathematics. From 2017 through 2019, she was the director of the graduate degree program in ecology and interdisciplinary programs at CSU with over 130 graduate students. Colleen's research is in disease ecology, and she enjoys working with undergraduate and graduate students in this capacity. In her role as Associate Dean, she oversees diversity and inclusivity, mentoring, and other projects and programs that impact graduate education across the university. So welcome on, come on. Let me go ahead and get your presentation set up. So just give us like 2 minutes. Thanks, everyone. Put this for fun. Mike, do you think this is something you want to use?
Yes, maybe.
I'll have it here.
It's hard with the math.
It is, and it's not as long as I thought, so. Definitely use it with the amount. I'm just filling my cup.
Thank you, and thanks so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Colleen, and I really love graduate students and graduate student education, so I'm very excited to be here today to tell you a little bit about graduate school. I have a presentation with slides, but I'm also very happy for you to, just interrupt me and we can have a conversation about questions that you have. And that includes our online participants as well. If you have a question, you can just put that in the chat, and then our moderators here can let me know what that is. Okay, is that a deal? You will interrupt me if you have questions. Okay, great. Yeah, so I've been here at CSU for about 18 years as a faculty member in the graduate school for the last 3 years. And I'm really happy to encourage you on your graduate school journey. So there's a lot of reasons to think about going to graduate school. The first is really, it's a personal and professional growth opportunity. Just like you have probably found your undergraduate experience to be transformative of who you are as a person, graduate school continues that process and is also very transformational with a lot of opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to really follow your passion and get into it in a great more level of detail than you can as an undergraduate. It's a lot of work, and it's not something that everybody does. And I think there's a real sense of accomplishment when you complete a big project and effort like graduate school. It also gives you very relevant credentials, which are important from a practical standpoint in terms of, sorry, message popped up there, which is important in terms of career and job advancement. About 48% of American adults over the age of 25 have completed a bachelor's degree or higher. Only 11% of American adults have completed a master's degree, and only 2% of adults have completed a PhD. So there's a level of credential and respect that comes with a graduate degree that not everybody in the working environment has. And so because of that, there are increased employment opportunities in recognition of the greater credential and skill set that you will have after completing a graduate degree. And with that also comes some financial rewards. So salaries are $10,000 to $20,000 greater in the first year of employment for those with graduate degrees compared to those with only an undergraduate bachelor's degree. So lots of reasons to think about going to graduate school. Okay, so I want to talk about the two main kinds of degrees. The first is the master's degree. It generally takes 1 to 3 years to complete. Not always, but it will often require that students pay their own tuition and fees. Don't forget about fees because they can be a fair chunk of change and add to what the costs are. These degrees are often more coursework focused. They can have a research component. And if that's the case, they usually have more guidance on the research component than what you would expect with a PhD. The master's degree can be really useful in and of itself, and it also is sometimes seen or used as a stepping stone to the PhD. There's really 3 main types of master's degree. The first is research-based with a thesis. This is what we usually think about with a research-based master's degree. These take a little longer, 2 to 3 years usually to complete. There's also a Plan B masters for many but not all programs, and these are similar to the thesis-based masters, but usually have a project instead of a full thesis. And so the sort of research product that comes out of them is not as intensive as with the thesis. And then finally, there are coursework only master's degrees. Sometimes these have an internship, sometimes they don't. These are usually faster, 1 to 2 years. And most often they occur in a setting for a professional master's degree, like a master's of education, social work, business administration, etc. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, any questions on the master's degree? What to expect there? Okay, so doctorate degrees are more intensive. They usually take 4 to 6 years to complete. They often include an aspect of financial assistance, and we'll talk about that, what that can look like in a bit. They usually involve 2 or 3 years of coursework and then 2 or more years of research. Professional doctorates may not require as much of the research piece, but they will require intensive time in residencies, internships, etc. The professional doctorate tends to be a little faster, just because when you engage in the research process, there's a lot of uncertainty that is associated with that. And so it can take a little bit longer to complete a research project. The doctorate degree generally will require a preliminary examination, which actually happens, even though it says preliminary, about 2 or 3 years into the PhD process. And that's a knowledge-based type oral exam that happens with a faculty group. And at that point, you move on to candidacy. That's usually the point at which you really start to engage heavily in your research piece. And often a dissertation is required as well. So that would be the written product from the research. Any questions about the doctorate degree?
You said preliminary exam, that would be when you're already in the PhD program, or would it?
Correct. Yeah, so when does the preliminary exam happen? It happens when you're already in the program. Yeah, so like 2 or so years in, and that's really, that's a point at which you advance to candidacy is what that says. So that means you've reached the basic qualifications for the PhD, and the only part remaining is the research piece. So you have become a candidate to receive the PhD. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so I want to talk about some factors that you should take into consideration when you're choosing a graduate school. So these are around the program of interest, what the institution is like, and then other things that you might want to think about. So when you think about the program that you want to apply to, you want to think about the reputation of that program and its faculty. Is it a highly ranked program? Yeah.
We have a question from the chat.
Okay, question from the chat.
What exactly is a thesis?
What exactly is a thesis? Oh, great question. And we might ask the same thing of what is a dissertation?
Yes.
So the thesis goes with the master's, the dissertation goes with the PhD, but they're very similar. They are a written description of the research that you did. They often consist of a number of chapters. Usually the master's thesis is about 2 chapters, and the PhD thesis is 3 to, I've seen as many as 6 chapters that describe, each one would describe a research project that the student had completed. And they're often fairly parallel to what would be a published scientific or research article, so in the primary literature. And a lot of times that's what happens. The chapters are published then as research papers. Does that address the question?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so going back to talking about factors to consider when thinking about graduate school. So reputation of the program, is it highly ranked? Will it give you a good education and opportunities to move on to the next step in your career? What is the program content and rigor like? So is it going to provide you with strong training? And is it a good match to what your interests are? For example, in our biology program, we have a very strong emphasis on plant molecular biology. But if you are interested in paleontology, we do not have a very strong paleontology program. So this might not be the best place if you're interested in paleontology, but it would be a really great place if you're interested in plant molecular biology. And we have other strengths, of course, too. Does that make sense? So you want to kind of check out and make sure that the program is a good match with your interests. Student satisfaction and career placement is very important. So where are people going when they graduate with degrees from that program? Are they getting jobs? Are they getting the kind of job that you want? Do you want to go into industry, academia, nonprofit, government agency? Where do these programs place their people? And then finally, what will be the cost to you and what kind of financial support structures are in place? Thinking about institutional culture and support, you want to think about generally what kind of financial aid is available. You want to look at their graduate school and think about what kinds of centralized programs are available for graduate students, particularly around professional development for what we might think about as soft skills or competency that are in addition to your academic and scholarly development. So things like entrepreneurship, communication, leadership. So are there programs that will help you develop those skills as well? And then what is their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice? And then there may be other factors that are important to you, like the size of the institution. What are you most comfortable in for your learning environment? Is it public or private? Is it in a geographical location that you like? Is it close to family or maybe far away from family? Those kinds of things you want to take into consideration as well. And then I also want to share a little bit about what is sometimes mysterious, and that is, what is it that graduate programs are looking for from you? What are they thinking about when they're considering who they're choosing to bring into their program? And this is based on my experience. There's no like hard and fast rules about this, but I think in general, these are the types of things that programs are considering. So the first is your academic and scholarly preparation. So this is represented based on your coursework choices. Do you have courses that are relevant? What your GPA is, and sometimes by standardized test scores. So even 3 years ago, GREs were probably required by most programs. Because of DEIJ considerations, they were starting to be phased out. And then with COVID, that created another barrier for students to actually take and get the GRE scores in. So more and more programs started to drop them. So there are programs that still require the GRE or other kinds of standardized testing, but that is less common than it used to be. And then the other piece is about your scholarly preparation. So have you done research or do you have other relevant experience in your area of study? Another piece to think about with the academic preparation is that usually the GPA requirement for entry into graduate school is at least a 3.0, but it's possible to petition for acceptance if your GPA is less than 3.0. And if that's the case, then you need a really clear argument about what the reasons were that your GPA was lower than a 3.0. Maybe you had some illness, maybe you had a family member to care for, maybe you had to work a lot of hours in order to support yourself and your education. Maybe you were immature and you didn't get off to a good start. Maybe, you know, lots of different reasons. You need to be able to identify what the reason is and show that it's been addressed so that it won't be a continuing issue as you continue in graduate school. And some additional evidence that you have overcome that barrier might be talking about what is your GPA, not overall, but within the relevant courses for the program that you're applying to, or what was your GPA in the last 2 years after you had a chance to adjust to the undergraduate program, for example. So some things to think about in order to demonstrate your readiness. And then the next piece that is important is your alignment of your research interests. So your interests should match well with the areas of strength and specialty within the program that you're applying to and the faculty that are there. And then a few other things to consider is your alignment with broader programmatic mission and values. So some programs, for example, are very focused on community-based research. Is that something that you're interested in? Some do a lot of extension and outreach. Some are very devoted to DEIJ activity. Some have teaching as a very strong component of their mission. So these are sort of extras about the program beyond just their research expertise. And do you match with that? Are you in alignment with those pieces as well? And then you want to demonstrate what your personal traits of success are. So self-efficacy is one of the best predictors of success in graduate school. And self-efficacy, just to define that, is your belief in your own capacity to execute the behaviors that are necessary to produce the performance that is required. So are you confident that you can do the work? Or at least that you can figure out how to do the work, okay? And a lot of programs are also looking now for a demonstration of grit or resilience, as well as passion for the topic. And sometimes it depends on the program, but for some programs, you need a faculty sponsor who says, yes, I will work with this specific student, bring them into my lab for a research project. And some programs you cannot get into if you do not have that. So it's really important to keep that in mind. And you have the opportunity to demonstrate these things about yourself, your academic and scholarly preparation, your match with research interests in the program, your alignment with the broader mission and values of the program, and your personal traits that you bring to this through your application materials. So I think in your packet or online, I've got some documents that address this in some more detail. about what the steps are in applying to graduate school. And in your materials that you use when you apply, that's where you really want to demonstrate that you are well prepared and a good match for the program. I think to do this, you really need a mentor to help you with the steps that are involved, someone who knows the system. And unfortunately, who you know is still an important aspect of the graduate school application, partially due to the recommendation letters that are required, and also just understanding the system and knowing how to navigate that. So workshops like these are super important because there aren't necessarily written rules. There's a lot of unspoken tradition and culture around applying to graduate school, and you need some guidance in order to learn that. So here's a few sort of suggestions in terms of timeline. So right now and always, you want to work on building your academic and scholarly preparation, right? So you want the highest GPA as possible. You want to have relevant coursework. You want to build your resume with experience. You want to think about narrowing down the type of programs that you are interested in, because there are hundreds of them and it takes some time. And in bold here, I have start talking with your professors. And that's really important for a couple of reasons. One, it is about who you know to some extent, so they can help you find programs that are relevant and help you make connections, especially if you need a faculty sponsor. Here at CSU and probably some of the other institutions where people are joining us from, the class sizes can be really large. And the best letters of reference are ones that address these 4 areas that I said programs are looking for, like your preparation and your research interest matches and those kinds of things, your